This is Tumani Kumar, and it's time to open up the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 108 of The Briefcase. I'm your host, Casey Holdahl, and we're about a little over a week away from the start of training camp. Not a whole lot going on in Rip City right now in terms of the Portland Trail Blazers, at least a lot of news that we can talk about just yet, but quite a bit of news here in Portland about basketball. The WNBA making its return to Portland, announcement made this week. We'll talk about the WNBA. We'll talk about the few things about the Trailblazers there are to talk about before things really start to kick up in a few weeks here as training camp gets underway, rolling right into preseason and then right into the start of the regular season on this edition of The Briefcase. Before we get to the big announcement about the WNBA returning to Portland, let's go ahead and just get some of the small bits of news off the table first. As I mentioned, training camp for the Portland Trailblazers starting in a little over a week. Media Day is on September 30th. First day of training camp is on October 1st. This year, training camp is happening in Tualatin. Team not heading out of town as they did the last couple seasons for training camp. So it'll be here in Portland. Again, technically Tualatin at the practice facility. So we'll have coverage from that getting going in a couple weeks here. Quite a bit of change, obviously, for the Portland Trailblazers this year. You have the addition of Denny Advia. Obviously, you have the addition of Donovan Clingan. You got Shaden Sharp's return. You got the second year of Scoot Henderson. A lot of stuff to pay attention to for this Portland Trailblazers team. Should be a pretty transformative, or at least an interesting season for this team. Really a chance to kind of see where this team is at right now. And I think probably the last season where I think they're probably going to be building towards something else. And then in future seasons, I imagine things will probably start picking up in terms of being competitive in those seasons right away, as opposed to now where it's, they're still putting things together a little bit. So a lot to pay attention to for this Portland Trailblazers team, and quite a few announcements still to be made about where you're going to see this Portland Trailblazers team next year. Some stuff about that is coming down the pike here soon. I think it's good news. I think you're going to appreciate it, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. It's also leak season right now too. I don't know that it's really news necessarily, but you have some of the new jerseys that came out that look quite a bit like some of the old jerseys that we've already had. You've seen some leaks from there. You're seeing some court leaks right now too. Anytime NBA 2K comes out, there's always going to be some leaks about some of the things that are coming for the season. They're usually correct. Sometimes they're not exactly correct, and a lot of times they don't look especially good, so they give kind of but not an accurate representation of what things are actually going to look like once you actually see them on the court or on the players. But either way, it is that time of year where you're probably starting to see some things dribble up. Sometimes they're real, sometimes they're not. Usually you can pretty much assume that things are what they are. But so far, not a whole lot to report officially about any of those things just yet. But once again, once training camp starts and once media day starts, once we have some opportunity to get in front of some of the executives, some of the players, probably get an answer to a few of these things, or at least some hints about some of these things. But if you've seen any of those leaks, stuff's all right. It's not bad. Could be worse. And again, I learned this a long time ago. When you work in sneakers too, or you cover sneakers as I have throughout the years too, those things always get leaked early, and they always look terrible. And when you actually see them in person and in shots that are actually not just someone's phone that's taking a photo of a computer screen, they tend to look a little bit better in person than they look when you see them leaked for the first time. So maybe don't have any hard and fast locked in opinions about how any of that stuff looks until you see it officially, because sometimes it doesn't look that good because it's just poor quality work, not because the stuff isn't actually good. That's all I'll say. Moving on, some of the things that have been locked in for this season, some of the theme nights the team is going to have this year, already locked in. Trailblazers tickets on sale now, went on sale a few weeks ago. So if you're interested in any of these nights, now is definitely the time to go online, go to trailblazers.com, secure some tickets. First one of those nights, October 27th, pretty early in the season, versus the Pelicans. Our good friend CJ McCollum making a return to Moda Center. Celebration of Hispanic and Latinx heritage, which will showcase and honor the rich cultural contributions of the Hispanic and Latinx community in Rip City. November 1st, a few days later, Oklahoma City Thunder is Get Out the Vote night. Obviously, the election coming up here in November. The night will engage and educate fans on the right to vote, the new voting system in Portland, and how to turn in their ballots. We have mail-in voting here in Oregon. It's pretty easy, but this is the first year that they're doing ranked choice voting here in Portland. Seems rather confusing to me, but this will be an opportunity to maybe figure out some of these things and get educated on them. I know people probably don't go to basketball games to hear about how to best vote, or how they're supposed to go about voting, not who you're supposed to vote for, but at least the actual function of voting. But, it is a public service, and we do have a pretty motivated and politically active fan base here in Portland. So makes some sense to do that. And I think, every NBA team is trying to do their civic duty by kind of getting the word out about voting. Again, here in Oregon, it's a little bit different because we've had mail-in voting for so long that things like kind of registration and actually going somewhere to vote and what you need to do, not as much of an issue here as it is other places, thankfully. But, it's never a bad idea to be knowledgeable about the electoral process. So October 1st versus Oklahoma City, get out the vote night. Check it out. And then November 10th versus the Grizzlies, Native American Heritage Celebration Night. This should be a good game as well. Night of Celebration will highlight Native artists, performances, and educational opportunities for all in attendance as we continue to center Native families and youth throughout the game. I believe last year was the first night we had a Native American Heritage Night, and it was great. Like, everything about it went off really well. It's such a great and vibrant community. Like, they really bring a great energy to the building. I thought it was one of our best Heritage Nights of the season. So that's November 10th versus the Grizzlies. Tickets on sale now for all those games and all the other games at Moda Center this season. Trailblazers.com. Secure some tickets. And more about tickets. Rip City Remix announcing that Sergey Olivia a couple weeks back will act as the head coach for the 2024-25 season. Sergey, also assistant general manager for the Portland Trail Blazers. That announcement was made soon after the Rip City Remix schedule was announced. It has been announced. Go to Rip City Remix to see that schedule up here at the Peninsula. Season tickets are available. Single game tickets are also available. It's a great time. If you haven't been to a Rip City Remix game, absolutely go this season. It is a fun time. I like this part of town anyways, but UP campus, it's a great experience. It's a great setting. See some fun basketball. And, they have a three-way guys. Taze Moore getting that third three-way contract that was announced a few days ago, joining Bryce McGowan's and Jessamine Naya as Portland's three two-way players. Having a three-way player would be interesting. What would be the other league that they would play in? I don't know. With so many young players on the team, I'm a little curious how much the two-way guys are going to spend with the Trailblazers this year as opposed to at the Remix. With last year being the first year of the Remix, I think a lot of it was the team learning how to best use the Remix in order to get the Portland Trailblazers better. And when you have so many young guys already on the team, I'm a little interested in the amount of time that the two-way guys are going to spend with the Trailblazers as opposed to previous seasons. Because previous seasons, particularly last season, basically they'd spend almost all their time with the Trailblazers. With a full roster, with 15 players, and with a lot of young players already on the roster, and a lot of young guards, all three of these guys, Justin Minaya is a forward, but both Taze Moore and Bryce McGowan's both guards. You could probably say Justin's kind of a guard too. So when you have three guys who are on two ways, who all kind of play the same position, and that position is already fairly well covered by the players who are on the actual Trailblazers roster, it makes you wonder a little bit just what is going to be the back and forth between those guys. I think it probably would behoove everyone if it got back to a system where the two-way guys probably spent more time with the Remix than they did with the Trailblazers and then got called up to the Trailblazers when it was really a need. But that's something they're also figuring out as they have this new G League team. And I think that's maybe part of the reason why Sergey is going to be the coach this year, is to really give the Trailblazers a sense of kind of what they have in the Remix and how they can best utilize the Remix. And having one of your assistant general managers being the coach, I think is really going to give them a window into what are the things we're doing well, what are some of the things we can improve upon, and really, but more importantly than that, what are some of the things that we're getting out of having a G League team right now? What are some of the things that maybe we can improve upon in order to get more out of our G League team, again, as they learn how to utilize it? It's obviously a great thing. It's great in its own right, but the point of the Remix is to make the Trailblazers better. And I think that, by having Sergey in that role, I think they're really kind of taking a step towards figuring out, like, how can we go about making the Remix the best product and also being a team that really helps us get the Portland Trailblazers ready for competing at higher levels going forward. And now, obviously, the big news in Portland in basketball over the last week, WNBA returning to Portland. On Wednesday, they made the announcement at Moda Center that the Bethal family, under the leadership of Raj Sports, is bringing the 15th WNBA franchise back to Portland. As many of you know, we did have a WNBA team, the Portland Fire, 20 years ago, only made it a couple seasons, unfortunately, before being discontinued, but it's coming back, and it's going to be great. Obviously, a ton of excitement in Portland for the WNBA, a ton of support for women's sports in Portland. A ton of support for sports in Portland, period. And every time I talk about like there being a ton of support for women's sports in Portland, that's absolutely true. But a lot of it's just because we have a lot of sports fans in Portland who don't necessarily care if it's a man or a woman playing. It's just good sports, which I think is the best way to go about having an engaged sports fandom in your city, is by people just liking sports, period, whether it's men or women. And we have that in Portland. It's So much excitement. My good friend and coworker and podcast co-host Brooke Olzendam leading the announcement yesterday at Moda Center. She did a fantastic job, Brooke. You're doing great. Back out there on the Rip City Rally right now, which also Rip City Rally about wrapped up. But if you have been to the Rip City Rally, if you haven't been to the Rip City Rally and it's coming to your town, check it out. Corvallis on Thursday, and I think that's actually the end of it. So this is probably a little bit of a late announcement for that. But go check out Brooke at the Rip City Rally if you haven't already. The Bethals, Lisa and Alex, obviously owners of the WNSL Portland Thorns, very successful soccer franchise, paying reportedly $125 million for the expansion franchise in Portland, which includes a practice facility. Not a whole lot to report about anything else yet, other than the fact that there is going to be a WNBA team here in Portland. They are going to play at Moda Center, but we don't know the name. There's obviously a lot of debate about whether they're going to bring the Fire back or not. I don't have any knowledge of that because, I mean, I'm sure people might realize this, but just to state it clearly, while the Trailblazers are supportive, very much so, of the WNBA and of the team that's going to be here in Portland, it is separate ownership. We're obviously sharing a building, but, you know, they're two separate organizations. So I just get to be a fan of this team, actually, and I don't have a whole lot of inside information about it. I would be a little bit surprised if they end up going with the Portland Fire. I think they're probably going to do a new team, a new branding, a new logo, new color ways, but they are going to engage the fans on a lot of that stuff, is what we were told. But nothing there to report just yet, other than there is going to be a WNBA team. They're going to start playing in 2026, 15th franchise. And, you know, the WNBA is absolutely blowing up right now. And just, again, I think it's less about necessarily being like, well, I support women's sports. And it's just people understanding that sports are sports, whether it's men or women playing. And if it's exciting and it's interesting and you have great personalities and you have a high level of play, as you have in the WNBA, it's going to be successful. And in Portland, it's going to be incredibly successful. You know, Kathy Engelbert talked about when they were doing their market research, she said that only the Bay Area had kind of better measurables in terms of having an expansion franchise other than Portland. And I mean, it's one of those things too, where it's like, again, there's no way it's not going to be successful here. It is going to thrive. They're trying to shoot for 20,000 season ticket holder deposits. That's more than the building holds, but you know, you want to take in deposits because some of those aren't necessarily going to pan out. Some of those are going to be maybe like partial season tickets. And then you start getting to talk about what is a season ticket. Is a quarter season ticket a season ticket? Is a half season ticket a season ticket? Is a suite a season ticket? So, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can calculate those things. But I'm guessing that they're doing a great job. I'm guessing they've already got a lot of people signed up for that already. And it's really a great thing for the city, a great thing for the region, a great thing for sports, a great thing for women's sports. We've got such great support for basketball here in Oregon that, I mean, the more basketball here, the better. And now we're going to have professional basketball year round here in Portland, which is absolutely a great thing. Congratulations to the Bethals. Congratulations to Portland. Way to go, everyone who had a hand in getting this thing taken care of, particularly after, you know, we were supposed to have it last year and then kind of some things went sideways. I don't think that stuff about the renovations was ever really probably the actual story about what happened there, but, you know, whatever. But it's happening now, which is, again, that's what matters, is the fact that even if there might have been some false starts, it's going to happen now. It's going to be successful. Put in your deposits for season tickets. It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited for everyone. And, you know, again, it's just the opportunity for everyone to kind of see themselves reflected in professional sports in Portland. I think it's a really great thing. It's going to be super successful here in Portland. And I'm really looking forward to it. And as I mentioned, while it's not necessarily the Portland Trailblazers news, this belongs to Raj Sports and to the WNBA, but we do want to be supportive. And we do have quite a few people working in our organization who have played in the WNBA, particularly at the practice facility in the front office. So let's go ahead and check out this video the team produced. I thought was great, with some of our former WNBA players who worked for the team, Asia Jones, Sherry Sam, and Tina Thompson, discussing their days in the WNBA and their thoughts about Portland getting a WNBA team. And this was done before it was official, but we've all kind of known it was going to happen either way. So let's go ahead and check this video out. I feel like the team did a really good job with it. And I always love hearing what Asia and Sherry and Tina have to say about their time in the WNBA and their time with the Portland Trailblazers. They're really interesting women, really interesting characters, and really smart about basketball too.
I've been in Portland 3.5 years now, and I feel like since I've been here, it's kind of been like a threat, like, oh, we might get one. And now to hear that we're actually going to get one, we're all excited. There's a ton of WNBA players in the city, so it's going to be great just to be able to actually support the team, see my friends come through and play, and for everyone to actually get to see the product.
getting a WNBA team, kind of surreal moment, you know, for the city of Portland. In my opinion, it's incredible.
A WNBA team in Portland, like, it's overdue. I remember when I first started playing professionally in the ABL, the Portland had a WNBA team.
Another one, TJ. Crosses over on Lewis.
Coming to Portland in the WNBA was one of my favorite trips because of the excitement, like, of the crowd and the support of the city.
Die-hard fans from the beginning, so I think it's incredible to reward their support that they've had for women's basketball, collegiately and professionally, so I think it'll be great.
Women's basketball, women's sports are on the rise, and to be able to actually go out and see people that people are talking about, Caitlin Clark, all these young players play, I think it's going to be exciting for them, and I think we're going to have a great crowd support.
Getting a professional team here, I think it's just a continual development for women's basketball. I know the soccer team here has been humongous for the community, for the young girls. So having a basketball team now to add to that just, gives the kids something to look forward to as they're growing up, especially the young hoopers, for them to go and see players, to see what they can become, and just continue to dream big.
I have seen the results of young women that have had the opportunity to see their role models. It's life-changing.
All the colleges are kind of far away here for the girls to go watch other women play basketball, so actually having it local and having something to aspire to, that's going to be great.
Nice, good job.
I'm super excited. Like, I'm gonna get my tickets and definitely be a fan.
The city of Portland is going to be on fire. I think that there's going to be like this synergy and like this excitement and this passion. So I'm excited for the city.
Great stuff there. WNBA, welcome back to Portland. You're going to thrive. You're going to do great. I think the other thing you see with the news is just how many other cities too are excited about the prospect of getting WNBA teams. I mean, everywhere always wants more sport teams, but you didn't necessarily hear that about the WNBA 4 or 5 years ago. You always heard it about, well, can we get a baseball team or can we get a football team? You didn't hear it so much about the WNBA. Now, every time there's a new announcement, and there's been quite a few recently with the new additions with teams in the Bay Area, in Toronto, and now in Portland, you always see places being like, well, when are we going to get a WNBA team? Which, I mean, I think really shows you just the growth of that league and of women's sports in general. And again, I think we're all better off for it. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thanks so much for joining me, as always. Again, we're a little more than a week out from training camp, so things really going to start to pick up here. Once we have Media Day on September 30th, we'll have plenty of coverage from that. But we'll also have a few things, again, popping over the next week here. So now is a good time to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. If you're listening wherever you get your podcasts, thank you as well. We'll be back next week with, again, a number of announcements, should be some good stuff. And also perhaps, the players have already been back here in town for quite a bit now. Usually we kind of leave them alone until training camp starts, but maybe a chance to maybe get in front of them next week a little bit to see what they've been working on and see how things are going down there in Tualatin as they prepare for another season of Trailblazers basketball. So for myself, thank you so much for joining me. I am Casey Holdahl. We will talk to you next week. Go Blazers.